Joining us now is former federal prosecutor Neama Rahmani, president of West Coast Trial Lawyers, to talk more about insurance and some of the other legal claims that people may be looking to file as they're looking to rebuild and recover. Thank you so much for joining us.
No, thanks for having me as always, Renee.
Now, let's talk about, first of all, for people that do have to file insurance claims and they're worried that maybe it may not pay out or there's going to be some hurdles there, what are some tips that you have for them?
Well, I expect that the carriers will pay out for total loss claims. Those are folks who have lost their homes because the vast majority of Angelenos that have insurance, they are woefully underinsured. They look at their policies, it will cost probably $1,000 per square foot to rebuild. We know that contractors are going to be in demand, and even with expedited permitting, it will take years to get that done. That doesn't consider their other damages, of course, their personal property, their loss of use. That's essentially rent that they're going to have to pay for the months and years that they have to vacate their home. So I think carriers will pay right away. I would advise people to be hesitant paying a lawyer or an adjuster to handle your insurance claim, only because they may take a percentage. Obviously, there are a lot of lawyers, ourselves included, that are doing it pro bono for fire victims. Retain one of those lawyers. Make sure you're not paying a lawyer or an adjuster a percentage of your settlement, because you're already going to be getting pennies on the dollar.
Now, for people, let's say, who had their fire insurance dropped before the most recent fires, is there anything lawful about that? What should people know there?
What they should know is the following. There's a big distinction between being canceled and non-renewed. The law really limits insurance carriers when it comes to cancellation in the middle of a term. That can only happen if someone commits fraud or they don't pay their premiums. But non-renewal is different. Insurance is a contract, and really it requires both parties to be bound. So California law does place some restrictions on insurers. They have to act objectively under their underwriting standards. So they can't rely on aerial photographs that really have nothing to do with the home, and they can't intentionally discriminate. But if they provide the proper notice, and it's 75-day notice, written notice, and has to specify the reason, the folks that were non-renewed, they're really out of luck and don't have a good claim there.
Now, a lot of people have been displaced by the fire. They're looking for housing right now, whether it's apartments, homes, or something to rent in. Now, if they are seeing price gouging, and we are hearing reports of that, do they have any legal recourse? What tips can you offer residents there?
They do have legal recourse, Renee, and we're talking about Penal Code Section 396. It prohibits anyone from increasing prices, including rents, by more than 10% during a state of emergency, which we're in. And we've seen some shameful price gouging by landlords and real estate brokers. So what you can do is you can file a complaint with the Attorney General's office, Bonta's office, or the city attorney here in Los Angeles, or the district attorney if it's LA County. But you can also hire a lawyer, and you can have that rent reduced. It could be something in a long-term lease. It can be an Airbnb, whatever it is. What's important to show is that price before January 7th. So have that Zillow listing, Redfin, whatever the case may be. That's the evidence that you're going to need. So if you're forced to sign a lease, for instance, that's 50% higher, you can get that lease reduced to 110% of the price before the fires.
Ah, good to know. Now, I'm sure you've also heard there have been some lawsuits that have already been filed against SoCal Edison, for example, for allegedly sparking the Eaton fire, and also a lawsuit against the LA Department of Water and Power over water supply issues. Talk to me about these lawsuits, and if there's really any kind of teeth that they have in terms of residents maybe actually seeing something successful from this.
Well, Renee, there are two very different lawsuits, and we're representing some of the victims as well. So I'll start with the Eaton fire. So that, of course, is the Pasadena and Altadena fire that displaced thousands of homes and destroyed many dwellings. And obviously, setting aside the destruction, we're talking about smoke damage, evacuation, all sorts of other damages that folks there suffered. That is a good case. There is compelling evidence so far, and it's still early in the investigation, that Southern California Edison was responsible for that fire. We've all seen the images and videos on social media that show the base of one of their towers appear to be the start of that fire. So that is a good case. The Palisades and Malibu case against the city of LA and DWP is not a good case. The government code is pretty clear, and I know people are upset about the San Ynez Reservoir not being filled and the hydrants not having water. But California law is clear, and it's really specified in that government code. There's multiple sections that say public entities, including the city, they are not liable for fire prevention. So the lawyers that are filing those claims, some of them are out of state, they don't understand California law, and the ones that are, I think they're trying to collect clients in case there's later a utility or a deep pocket they could go after. But those cases against government entities are not good cases. You see people talking about class actions. This is not a class action. This is a mass tort. Everyone's damage is unique. Some people lost their homes. Some people have that soot and ash damage. And some people just had to evacuate and might have been injured. So it's not really ripe for a class action. So you do see some lawyers that are preying on victims here. And I encourage people, do not pay someone when you've suffered a loss like this to handle an insurance claim or a lawsuit that isn't viable.
All right, Neama Rahmani, President of West Coast Trial Lawyers, thank you so much for your insight, for joining us.
Thanks for having me, as always.